Alrighty, I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm not doing too well today. Um, the best way has been for me to cope with this is just get it out of my mind and not think about it. And I was doing so well ever since I got disowned and disinherited over social media and Facebook and flying monkeys, and people just really, no one gave a shit about my mother her whole entire life. None of these people, not Nancy, not my cousin, Julia and her husband, who are now calling to wish my mother happy Easter. Not even my aunt. My aunt said she always wanted to get as far away from family as she could possibly get. But then when my mother inherited the money, all of that changed. All of it. So all of a sudden my mother became, this huge interest to people, and they all wanted something to do with her and love her. And except for when... So, make a long story short, I got told by Nancy Burgess Hawley 2 years after her accusation of me being a prostitute in Australia. And first of all, Nancy Burgess Hawley in Australia, it is like, I think $60, and these women see up to 10 and 15 men a day. It'll be a cold day. I would rather be on the streets homeless than ever stick dicks in my vagina for $60, okay? That's why I think you're just so disgusting and filthy that you would even think that about someone, or think that about me. Instead of seeing, hey, you know what, I'm working for some really cool companies, you thought very sexually sick, disgusting things about me. And I'm sorry, Nancy Burgess Hawley is probably the one who kickstarted this whole thing, because she had been disowned and disinherited. And so she was hoping to see someone suffer just like she had. And she got disowned and disinherited when she was 21 or something, like in her 20s. I never thought this would happen. I never thought I was going to end up being the scapegoat of the whole family dynamic. And money and everything aside, the suffering, like being scapegoated, and especially because it's based on lies and it's for money, and what it really boils down to, because I had a family. I come from a family that is incapable of love. They never loved me. Make a long story short, and that was the hardest thing to realize when the healing process started. For the past 5 years, I never got to speak to anyone. I never got an explanation, never got any reason why. I was just blacked out of everything by my pedophile aunt, my grandmother, and my mom. At first, I thought it was just my mom doing this, and then I realized it was my own grandmother involved in it. After my mother inherited the money from her uncle, I'm pretty sure my aunt and my grandmother wanted to get their hands on that money. They probably felt offended, and they were probably going to do whatever they could to make sure I didn't get it. They wanted it. And my grandmother, Julie, was always the golden child. I was put on a Greyhound bus, just like my mom was, after I turned 18, and I was no value. They were using me for tax deductions and tax write-offs. And as soon as I turned 18, I was out the door. They threw me out on a Greyhound bus. So, my grandmother wanted to give all the money to the golden child, or the golden granddaughter, which is Julie. So I was tormented. I was tormented with the worst nightmares, repetitive nightmares for almost 4 or 5 years. Like, I chewed all my teeth down. My nightmares were me in my grandparents' house, just searching, and my grandmother was dying, and I wasn't able to get there and say goodbye to her. My mom was dying, I wasn't able to get there to say goodbye to her. So my mom finally apologizes to me, and I go down there, and Julia and Dan and my aunt, they're all busy calling to make it as difficult for me as possible and put my grandmother into so much stress. That's all they were doing, was calling my grandmother and just putting my grandmother under this tremendous amount of stress that she didn't need to be under. And they had this fantasy going, and if you read online, one of the tactics to steal estates is to make sure that the elderly parent feels like they're being protected from some evil. And I'm an ordained minister. I've never hurt anyone in my life. I'm not perfect, but I've never been arrested, never broken the law. And so these people were painting pictures of me. And I think They knew, like I said, there's a method to their madness. That's why my cousin's husband was laughing about it. He said it's been in bragging. He goes, ha ha ha, it's been so easy to get you to go crazy. All we've had to do is ignore you. And that's basically what they did for 5 years. I never got an answer why. Blocked from everything. And so when I did come back, Julia and her husband are calling my grandmother immediately. This is the same person who's been talking to me on Facebook for the past 4 years. They start calling immediately. And their worry wasn't my mom, who they're planning on, I put 2 and 2 together. They're planning, with me out of the picture, my grandmother will leave everything to them. And that's what they want. So me coming, that's why I said they're greedy. Because technically speaking, there'd be enough for us all to go around. But no, they've got their eyes set on everything. They even stole my own personal items. That's how sick these people are. Like, I had things at my grandparents' house. They're all gone. I had an Easter egg that I got at the White House that was signed by Apollo Schmidt. He was the only geologist to go up to the NASA, to the moon. They stole everything from me. Yeah. So the post-traumatic stress nightmares of me, those finally stopped. I kind of healed. I was like, okay, I did get, my subconscious knew. I got closure. I got to say goodbye to my grandmother. And, but these bastards, they made it just so difficult. Like, so uncomfortable for me to be down there. They did everything to make sure I was as uncomfortable as possible. The amount of phone calls my cousin's husband put to my grandmother, and it was just sick. I actually eavesdropped on them, and what he was talking was like, he was like, so Miss Carolyn, we'll protect you from her. She's just so evil. We'll just protect you from her. And, I've worked so hard all my life raising these children. So basically trying to butter my grandmother up to make sure she gives them. And then they put the house for sale. I mean, like, these people were only thinking about money. And I was reading online about people that are scapegoated and family units, and they say if you are the target of narcissistic abuse and scapegoating, you'll be lucky. They definitely won't give you anything, and you'll be lucky if you get something from the Goodwill donation thing. So lo and behold, my grandmother did give me, she's like, this stuff is going to Goodwill, I'll give you something from it. So I got this t-shirt. Yeah, so they're getting all my mom's money, but I got this little t-shirt for my grandma. So yeah. My heart's hurting a lot right now because I had gotten to a certain point where I'd healed from it. And I realized I've been crying for 5 years and having nightmares for 5 years for a bunch of assholes. Because that's what they are. They're assholes. My grandmother married her cousin. My aunt married a 20-year-old guy from the Navy to commit Navy fraud. My cousin, her first husband, these people are just trash. And I have been crying about trash. But it still hurts because they're my family. And I'm not perfect, but I've never married my cousin and would never marry a 21-year-old. And I would feel guilty as hell if I was the fault of my own father's death because I stole all his money, just like my cousin. So I had a relapse with the depression. I thought I was over it. Just the shock that my cousin has the audacity to call my mother when I listened to the phone calls. They didn't give a shit if she lived or died, and they don't. And if anything, they're only calling to find out if she's dead or not, because they're banking on her money. They want her money as quick as possible. But, alrighty. Hopefully I'll be better. I think I will. Just a bunch of assholes that she would even have the audacity to call my mother. Like, this bitch. Like, she's a fucking bitch. Julia Anna Howell, you're just as much of a bitch as Nancy Burgess Hawley is. Like, I never did anything to you. I never did anything wrong. I came to go be my mom's side because she asked me to. And you're more worried about your Thanksgiving dinner and making sure I'm not there while your husband's laughing at me, saying how easy it's been to take my mom's money and how easy it's been to make me go crazy. I mean, like I said, didn't you do this with your first husband? Like, why can't you go after, I know you're up to your ass in financial student debt, and I know Your husband has this little stupid construction job, but seriously, you have no heart either. You're just another piece of shit. I'm gonna say it. You're shit. Um, so, yeah, such is life. I have heartache and it hurts and heartburn right